Hey guys, Triple B here! With the Pokemon TCG World Championships this past weekend, there's been a lot of really big news coming out. We're getting some very exciting card reveals, there's a mechanic from the past coming back, as well as the reveal of Paradox Pokemon coming into the TCG with our November set, Paradox Rift. And the world's location for next year has also been announced, and it's going to be in Hawaii. So make sure you're grinding those points and get your invite for next year. The season did just start, and they've restructured the way that the point system works. You get 6 best finish limits, and they're spread across the whole year. So if you can't make a cup during one quarter, don't worry, you got all year to do it. So you can get 6 cups, best finish limits, 6 regionals, and 6 challenges. So plenty of time, full season ahead of us, and there's going to be a lot of exciting cards to build decks with during that time. If you're one of the lucky few people that was able to snag one of these promos at Worlds, well, I shouldn't say lucky, highly skilled players actually, since it's first, second, and third place, they've already clinched a spot for next year's Worlds invite. So they can kind of just chill, learn about the meta, relax. They don't need to be grinding challenges and cups like the rest of us. So congrats. Awesome showing this weekend, guys. Amazing players and some very exciting decks to come out of it. For the new cards, though, we're getting to see Paradox Pokemon, both future and ancient. So some pretty cool artwork to come out of it and some very interesting mechanics. We have seen quite a few revealed already, the first of which Screamtail will cover. So it's the ancient form of Jigglypuff. It's got an attack Slap, 30 damage, and then Roaring Scream. The attack does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each damage counter on this Pokemon. You don't apply weakness or resistance for bench Pokemon, but the active ones, you can do it, so pretty solid. 90 HP, so that does cap it at being able to put out 160. You can do it as snipe damage. You can give it a Bravery Charm, though, to scale that up by another 50. Giving you, what's that, 130 that you could get up to, double that to 260. You can be sniping off a single prizer, pretty solid. You can accelerate energy out to this with Gardevoir EX, putting the damage counters onto it, so you can hit some pretty scary numbers fairly efficiently. Brute Bonnet, being another ancient Paradox Pokemon, has an ability Toxic Powder. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon has an ancient booster energy capsule attached to it, you can make both active Pokemon poison. So if it's on the bench, just poison guys. Pretty solid. It's on a basic Pokemon, so easy way to scale up some extra damage. Combine it with Radiant Sneasler to put 3 damage counters from that poison. That's pretty clutch. We haven't got to see what Boost Energy Capsule is just yet, though, so I'm thinking it'll likely be some sort of tool card, might be an energy. We'll find out soon enough, I'm sure. Its attack, though, 2 dark and 1 colorless. Rampaging Hammer does 120 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack, though, so you gotta kind of switch around to remove that effect, but I feel like it's mostly going to be included for the ability, just getting some extra damage counters out onto your opponent's Pokemon. And the final ancient Paradox Pokemon we're getting is Roaring Moon EX. 230 HP, it's a dark-type base. Pretty solid. 2 dark and a colorless to use Frenzied Gouging. Knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. If your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out in this way, then this guy's going to do 200 damage to itself. So it's not knocking itself out. You are taking a knockout, but then you're sitting there with 30 health left. So there'll be situations where you know your opponent just can't attack next turn. You're pretty safe to be able to use this. So definitely an interesting inclusion for dark type decks. You could charge it up by using things like Dark Patch. Kind of clutch. And its second attack, Calamity Storm, does a base damage of 100 for 2 dark and a colorless also. You can discard a Stadium in play, though, and if you do, it's going to do another 120, so 220 all up. You can be taking out basic Vs or EXs with this. Not a bad attack, and definitely an interesting inclusion for some decks. Just having that Frenzied Gouging attack, especially as like a finishing move, like you come out, you know, hey, I just need to take my last 2 prizes, I'll knock you out. Yeah, I have 30 health left, but you don't get another turn because game's over. Seems fine. For the future Paradox Pokemon, though, we're seeing Iron Bundle. So basic water type. Also, I love the kind of the background artwork going on these. I didn't mention it for the ancient ones, but they had that little bit of a swirl. And then for these guys, they've got like that little bit of a, I don't know, glitch effect or like data effect on the right-hand side. I like it. It's got the ability Hyper Blower. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon's on your bench, you can switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. Your opponent chooses the new active Pokemon, though, so it's not like boss's orders, it's more so like Repel or Escape Rope. And if you do, you have to discard this Pokemon and all attached cards, though. But it's basically just like, hey, you can use Nest Ball to get into a Escape Rope, sort of, without having to switch out your own guy. Interesting. Feel like it'll be situational, but there'll definitely be decks that'll run it. Its attack, Refrigerated Stream, does 80 damage for water and 2 colorless. If the depending Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon, it can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Very interesting effect, especially since we're seeing like stage 2 EXs, V-Star Pokemon are still running around, their evolutions, so you could be using this. You're not doing big damage, but you are preventing them from attacking and forcing them to find a way to switch to be able to attack. It's kind of cool. The next future Paradox Pokemon we've got is Iron Moth. So it's a basic fire, 130 HP, has the ability Thermal Reactor. Once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot, you can move any amount of fire energy from your other Pokemon to it. Interesting. So you can be using things like Magma Base and charge up stuff on the bench. Well, this would be on the bench, I guess, move it up. Kind of cool. It's also just helpful to having like a single prize attacker, so into big fire type decks that are V-Stars or EXs. Charizard EX, for example, just coming out. It's a dark type. You do kind of need some sort of fire type attacker so that your opponent just doesn't run grass Pokemon and take an instant win by hitting weakness into you. So having Iron Moth just kind of has that clutch that you can just throw it on your bench, switch it to the active, accelerate energy to it, deal with the guy that's trying to hit weakness into you. It seems like an interesting inclusion. The attack Heat Ray does 120 damage, and during your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Heat Ray. So it doesn't say that it can't attack at all. We did see that TM tool cards are coming into the TCG, so you could have those on there, give it some other attacks to be able to use. It's not completely locked out, so it's not like you're forced to have to switch it out. You just can't use the one attack it has, but there's ways to give it other attacks. And for the future Paradox EX Pokemon, we're getting to see Iron Valiant. We did know it was coming since it's on the ETB for Paradox Rift. We just didn't know what the card was going to be yet. It's got the ability Tachyon Bits? Tachyon Bits? I don't know, I'm probably saying that wrong. But once during your turn, if this Pokemon moves from the bench to the active spot, you can put 2 damage counters onto one of your opponent's Pokemon. It does say only once per turn, but that's for this card. So if you did run 4 copies of it in a deck, you could proc all 4 of those in a turn using like Escape Rope, Switch, Manual Retreats. Could be sniping things like Compies up against Lost Box, which is interesting, and just help fix up some numbers in Psychic type based decks like Gardevoir EX. The attack is going to be 2 Psychic and a colorless, does 200 damage, and during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. This one is just straight up can't attack. It's not that it can't use that attack, it just can't do anything. But you're going to be running a lot of Switch to be proccing that ability, so you just switch out, remove that effect, and you should be fine. Definitely an interesting conclusion, and I'm sure there's going to be decks based around it. The other reveal we did get to see is that Ace Spec cards will be coming back. So they're similar to like Prisms or Radiant cards where you can only have 1 Ace Spec card in your deck. Interesting. We haven't got to see what the Ace Specs are though. These are just ones that previously existed since it is an old mechanic. So ancient Paradox Pokemon aren't the only blast from the past that we're going to be getting, since this is going to be coming back as well. They're going to be trainer cards from memory. So tools, supporters, items. I don't think there was any Ace Spec Pokemon. I could be wrong though, happily be corrected. If anyone's more familiar with the mechanic, please let me know in the comments down below. That's not it for the new cards we're getting revealed though, since we did get to see Terra-type Mewtwo and Terra-type Skelly Ridge, which will be coming out as starter decks in Japan. We'll likely get them in our Paradox Rift set though. So Mewtwo EX, it's going to be a lightning type, but it's going to be using Psychic Energy for its attack. It's a Terra Pokemon, so while it's on the bench, it doesn't take any damage, and its attacks are Transcharge, which is going to attach 2 basic Psychic Energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. It is just 1 Psychic Energy, so not very hard to pay, and it's a basic Pokemon, so you could slot it into like a Gardevoir EX deck just to get some energy out before you have your stage 2s online. Kind of clutch. The second attack, Photon Kinesis, does base damage of 10, but then scales up by 30 for each Psychic Energy attached to all of your Pokemon. I like that. So unlike Zacian B and Gardevoir, where they're only going up by 30 for the energy attached directly to them, which means they're having to put a lot of damage counters onto themselves and be in some risky range of, well, just getting knocked out by things that don't need to do a lot of damage, Mewtwo doesn't have that problem. So it isn't a Psychic Pokemon. You can't use Psychic Embrace to charge it up. You'd likely have to just do attach for turn and then Psychic Embrace to something else, energy switch it up to it, or just attach for turn, following turn, attach again. So there's ways to get it going, but just including 2 copies of energy switch into Gardevoir doesn't seem like, well, that difficult to do. You could also run the supporter card Poppy that lets you move 2 energy cards from one of your Pokemon to a different one. So you Psychic Embrace to a Psychic Pokemon, then just go Poppy, move 2 Mewtwo's online. You're fine. So definitely an interesting idea, and will likely be the replacement for Zacian and Gardevoir once rotation hits, since both those cards are E-Block, and they'll be on their way out likely in March or so when we get the next rotation. We did get to see is it Skelly Dirge or Skelly Ridge? I feel like I always say this Pokemon wrong. I always say Skelly Ridge. It's Yeah, it's Skelly Dirge. Okay, so Skelly Dirge EX, it's a metal Pokemon. It is a stage 2, so not quite as convenient as Mewtwo, where you just throw it on the bench and you're ready to go. You do have to evolve up into it. We did have a previous Fire Skelly Dirge EX though, so it might be a deck that you can kind of build around with the two of them now. It has an ability, Explosive Song. Once during your turn, you may discard a Fire Energy card from your hand to use this ability, and then you're going to do 60 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Its second attack, Raster Burn, is going to cost you 2 Fire Energy and do 160 damage. It's not affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon either, so it can be shredding through them if there's things that are taking less damage. Like I know Reverum, you could be running it with that stage 1 tool card we're getting in Pokemon 51 to take 30 less from attacks. You just go, no, I don't care, shred through it. Reverum's also fire weak though, so you just kill it with the fire type Skelly Dirge and just shred through that regardless, because you just do an absurd number. But for other situations like that Mimikyu that doesn't take damage from EX Pokemon, yeah, that's probably the more likely thing where it will come up. But there's situational things. Also, Goodra V-Star. You'll shred through Goodra V-Star. That's a good example to use. I should have started with that one. Interesting card though, and definitely keen to see if it sees some play. I know there'll be some rogue decks. There's people that are big Skelly Dirge fans and will likely try and find a way to make it work. At the moment, I'm not 100% sold on it, but happily be proven wrong if the meta does shift to a situation where this is top tier. Getting to see some more Pokemon card reveals though. Bombardier EX, Mantike, Veltal, Gorgeous Mantle, all very cool looking cards. So Bombardier EX has the attack Fast Carry. If you go first, you can use this attack on your first turn, get to search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. It's not limited by anything, so it's not like non-rule box or anything like that. So you could use this, get your Arceuses, get your Miraidons, get whatever you want. Like, you can slot this into any deck effectively. It's just like a replacement for Battle VIP Pass, since that will be rotating. So you just go Nest Ball, get into this, switch into it, attach 1 energy, set up your bench, you're fine. With EX Pokemon being a lot of stage 2 ones, it is really handy just to have more outs to get basics onto the bench, so being able to just use 1 guy, 1 energy, go. Yeah, definitely seems like a good inclusion in a lot of decks. Mantike getting a new card. The baby Pokemon haven't seen love for quite a while, so it's good that they're all kind of getting it this time around. We got Bonsly, we got Igglybuff, I believe it was, and now we're getting to see Mantike. I'm wondering if we're going to get like Elekid, Magby, and Pichu at some point as well. But Mantike, fluffy healing, heal 120 damage from one of your bench Pokemon. Doesn't cost any energy, has 30 health, free retreat, so that kind of seems like the standard for baby Pokemon. They're going to have 30 health, don't have to pay for an attack, and they don't have retreat, but Sableye is going to eat them up, so be very careful because people like Lost Box. The new Veltal card, 2 colorless energy to use Crosscut, 30 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon's an evolution Pokemon, does 60 more. So 90 damage for 2 colorless on a basic dark. It's okay. Will it see play? Probably not, but maybe. Like, there'll be decks that might just slot it in as a one-off. I'm not sure that 90 damage is really relevant. Even if you're hitting weakness, doubles up to 180 with something like a Choice Belt, puts you up to what, 120, you double it to 240. I don't know, I don't really see a situation where it comes up, but we'll see. And Gorgeous Mantle, a new tool card. So if the Pokemon this tool card is attached to doesn't have a rule box, it gets 100 more health. When it gets knocked out though, it does give up 2 prizes. So it's effectively turning your non-EX and non-V Pokemon into those. Like, it gets more health, but add a trade-off. So if you want to make sure that your Manaphy on the bench isn't going to be taken out by Sableye pings, give it this. Has 170 HP, a little tougher to deal with. But then when they just go boss, hit it with Raikou, they're taking 2 prizes. So your single prize trade-off is now gone. Be careful. Interesting card though. Also, the fact that this can be used in GLC is, well, kind of cheeky. Since GLC doesn't let you use rule box Pokemon, you can run this in any deck, just slot it onto things, and all of a sudden it's just like, yeah, this guy's a beast. Like, Cape of Toughness sees a lot of play in that. You check it on big basics, but now you have this where it's just like anything is just bigger. That's epic. So I feel like it's definitely going to find a home in GLC, and I could see this seeing play in standard in select decks as well. That's it for the reveals. What do you think of the new cards that have been announced? Is there anything that caught your eye? You have some deck ideas in mind already? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, with the announcement of the World Championships in Hawaii next year, really hoping to see you guys down there. Best of luck in this season, and make sure to subscribe to keep up with the shenanigans. Till next time though, take care of yourselves.